So, good morning again. I'll be introducing you to the concept of digital media ethics and the media ethics roadmap that colleagues of mine at the Institute for Digital Ethics at my university have developed. I might skip a couple of slides for reasons of time and brevity. I've been asked, so bear with me. I'll start with this one. The fundamental question, do we need media ethics? Do we need digital ethics? By looking at the various materials that are available online, like this propaganda video from the Islamic State, that is also widely available to children and youth as well, I would say yes, and I guess we all agree on that. But also much more closer to our topic here at this conference would be the widely available pornographic and abuse materials that are online. So this is a snapshot, a screenshot from the recently opened YouNow platform. So perhaps it's just a fad, but this is a platform that certainly young people are using at the moment. Let's see how it will be developing. So here's my attempt at a definition of what digital media ethics, or just digital ethics as we call it, is. There is no standard definition about this emerging field, but I would say digital media ethics is about acquiring value-based media competence and skills. So values are at the core of this concept, and that would enable people to evaluate and judge and, most importantly of all, reflect of what they're doing in the digitized world. And therefore, they should be able to act in a responsible manner whenever they are online and doing something. And the objective, the general aim would be for young people, but also for adults, to lead flourishing lives, as the old Greek philosophers would have called that. So a life that is worth living and doesn't harm anybody, including oneself. So just a very brief overview of the topics that we are dealing with at the Institute for Digital Ethics at Stuttgart Media University. One of the major topics is certainly hurtful online behavior. You know, cyberbullying, cyberstalking, the phenomenon of shitstorming and bashing, sexual harassment and trolling and what have you. But also other potentially dangerous media content, violence pages, hate pages, web porn, suicide forums, and all of that. And also a very large trend, of course, as you all know, is the phenomenon of self-disclosure. Many young people, but also adults, like to give away information about themselves freely to whomever. Personal data, very intimate selfies. Facebook and Instagram are also places for this kind of exchange, but also the just mentioned YouNow platform of videos that we would call too much information videos. I'll give you a snapshot in a minute, a screenshot in a minute, where young people especially just love to tell about their lives in a very intimate way, and sometimes we wonder why they do it. But also linked to that is the idea and phenomenon of big data and the ethic of algorithms. So where does all the information about ourselves come from? Usually the source will be us, and we give it to Facebook and YouNow and Instagram and all these platforms. But that takes away quite a chunk of our, well, of our self-responsible lives away. Our autonomy, it makes us into transparent persons, and our privacy is increasingly getting lost. So these discourses of surveillance and control are also at the heart of what we're dealing with when we talk about digital ethics. Also, recent phenomena like self-tracking. You know, people wear armbands to have their blood pressure and brain activity and sleep patterns and I don't know what tracked. And those data get stored and then are getting used for competing with other people. So this quantified self-movement is also something to think about. Is it good for us? Is it positive for a flourishing life? Question mark. Well, I'm a bit skeptical here. And then, of course, the larger background to it is the Internet of Things. In the future, in the very near future, almost every device will have a link to the Internet, and everything can be tracked and monitored. So what kind of world will we be living in, let's say, in 2020 or 2025, which is not such a long time away from us? So, yes, now I'm right in the middle of what the internet also brings home, among very, very many good things and interesting things, but also pages like these, slut pages. So perhaps ex-boyfriends or ex-lovers of, in this case, girls, they might post these pictures of their ex-girlfriends just to, you know, create a slut image of these ladies in order to be detrimental to them. And that is a form of labeling, of course. And, you know, the internet never forgets anything. So this will stick with those people affected by it, possibly for the rest of their lives. But also increasingly, people like to take such pictures of themselves and post them online for various reasons. We might muse about this, but sometimes it's really a question of competition or group pressure. And the question is, oh, are these people who do this aware of what they're doing and about the consequences that their actions might be having? Or this rather harmless seeming too much information video, this is just a screenshot of, in this case, a young girl talking about her life and all the details and when she gets up and when she has breakfast and when she meets a boyfriend and when she goes to school, with lots of personal data, address data, and so on. So it takes away your privacy, it makes you traceable and trackable, and that might have very negative consequences. Or, you know, this phenomenon, the selfie, it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. People take pictures of themselves and post them to Facebook, and other people like it and share it, and within seconds sometimes these pictures are, you don't even know where they are, but possibly linked to other data banks and perhaps even government agencies. You don't know, but they're Googleable, and you will be found, and that is the message that many young people are not aware of, because they more or less playfully and perhaps naively are using these platforms like Facebook and Instagram and so on. But it's amazing just how many data Facebook collects and stores and gives away. You don't have to read this, right? But this is just an overview of how many data ranges Facebook really collects and exploits, you know, using it for data mining and then selling it back to you in a way in order to present you with certain forms of advertising. And that's their business model, which is fine in a way, which is okay in a way, but we just need to be, and young people especially, need to be aware of just how many data they give away. And not many are aware of that. So the general context of all this, of all these happenings is, of course, the mediatization of childhood. The internet has become a, well, not just an important social space for children, but also for our whole society. Internet use is starting at increasingly earlier ages. It's not an exception these days that even 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds know how to navigate YouTube at least, or some special websites that might have some positive outcomes, but if unaccompanied, it may also be negative. And of course, internet use is increasingly mobile. Even we adults, we have our smartphones with us all the time. The kids, they see it, and they want to have it too, that type of gadget. So the internet is increasingly accompanying us, and not always under the, let's say, not always under parental control or guidance. And that is, of course, at the heart of what we need, that parents or educators accompany their children or their students, pupils, when they use the internet. But that is quite a challenge and not easy to do when the internet is so mobile and so effervescent and ubiquitous. You cannot control people, children, all the time, and you wouldn't want to do that, of course. So just a very quick look, yes, these are survey results from among 6 to 18-year-olds in Germany from last year. Well, the older ones, as you see, they use the internet, they use the internet, of course, to 100%. But it's interesting that even 6 to 7-year-olds, 39% of them will be accessing the internet. And then very quickly, the the ages, the percentage points go up when the kids get a bit older. So 8 to 9-year-olds, 76%. That is quite a remarkable result. And I'm sure the results will be similar in Poland. Social networks like Facebook and others, the takeoff point really is at round about 12 years. I mean, you must be 13 years of age in order to legally create a Facebook account, but how can you control it? In any event, among 12-year-olds, and I know of 11-year-olds that desperately want a Facebook profile, and around that age, they start to be doing this. And once the children or youths are around 17, 18, as you see, 85% of them, they use it all the time. Social networks are extremely important at that age, of course. This is another aspect, one of the core aspects. We'll be talking about hurtful or transgressive online behavior, again, results from Germany. Has anyone that you know ever been hurt via the internet or smartphone? And almost half, I mean, around about 40% of those young people asked in the survey said, yes, I have heard such things, or I have witnessed such things. There are some differences between girls and boys that I don't go into here, but it is a problem, and it's a very wide problem. It's penetrating society to a large degree. So, against this background, I think we need to ask a very fundamental question that is ethics related, and that is, how would we like to be living together in our society, in our mediatized society? And I would guess, speaking as a media ethicist, that calls for developing a process for reflection, a multi-stage reflection process. That will be my roadmap that I'll be going into. And also creating something that we might call an ethical compass, a guiding structure that leads us through this mediatized society. And what we as young people, but also as parents and educators and teachers need to have is, we need to acquire a competence in problem solving, troubleshooting, so to speak. That is very important because there are those problems and troubles in the classroom, in the playgrounds, and at home. That's where the children also spend a large part of their life, of course. And as educators, we need to be aware of this and need to offer something to them, to the parents and to the students. So this is what I'll be talking about. This is the background to the instrument that we developed at the Institute for Digital Ethics. You'll find English and Polish translations of this. I have seen them right here in the materials that are given out. So it was just earlier this year that we published in the German language then a brochure that is called Ethics Go Click, kind of a value sat-nav or navigation instrument for digital living, and colleagues of mine were the authors. All of these materials are, of course, freely available through the ClickSave websites, and as I said, Polish and English versions as well. The focus of these materials was on developing and strengthening the individual personality of young people as internet users, really addressing them as individuals and enabling them to evaluate their own media usage behavior. So this is really the nucleus for the value-based media competence or media skills navigation instrument that I'll be telling about. And much of it is centered on what we call the ethics of care, the ethics of mindfulness, of really caring about the needs of oneself and of other people. Because only if you reflect that will you be able to behave ethically in the cyber world. So I'll skip this slide, but I'll dip right into the roadmap, as we called it, which has the aim to getting young people to talk about online violence and addressing online violence and to tackle online violence in an ethical way. This roadmap, here's the overview, has 7 steps, and I'll go through these 7 steps with you right now. So I'll start with step 1, of course. And step 1 would simply be to raise awareness for vulnerabilities. And there are lots of vulnerabilities, you know, from rude words that are uttered in the schoolyard to very hateful commentaries or postings on a social network. But let's face it, vulnerability is a human condition. It has always been there, and we need to be able to live with vulnerabilities, and that includes young people. But hurtful online behavior really aims at attacking a person's social reputation or image, and very often means trying to destroy that person's reputation. And we know how this has sometimes ended with young people committing suicide because their reputation was so utterly destroyed that their whole personality got destroyed. So this is really a serious issue. By hurting someone or somebody's subjective character, you are also, and we shouldn't forget that, hurting that person's opportunities for living a self-determined and flourishing life, simply because that person will be brandished and tarnished forever, because the internet, I need to say it again, does not forget. There is no eraser that you can use and wipe off all those hurtful commentaries or nasty pictures that might be there. So if you really hurt somebody, it will be with that person, you could say, forever. So raising awareness means making especially young people aware of what is an insult. What does shaming somebody mean? When do you shame somebody, and what are the consequences of shaming that other person, or of humiliating that other person? It's really all about, you know, this old game that we all play in one form or another of including somebody or excluding somebody. And insulting, shaming, and humiliating people is about disintegrating them, of keeping them out of a core group or whatever you'd like to call it. Perhaps it's just a circle of friends, but very often is the message is, oh, we hate you, we don't like you, get out of here, we don't want you. And especially young people are doing this very often. Step 2 would be to, first of all, recognize the roles and motives of such conflict situation. Who is the leading agent in this, the principal, and who is the victim and why, and who could be an intermediary that is going in between, you know, the bully and his or her victim, and who could be helpers, and identifying those positions of helpers that could be friends or teachers, even mediators. That is very important. But most people just don't know how to help. They are very reluctant to help because they think, oh, they might get drawn into the situation and that might have bad outcomes for them as well. So this is very important to very calmly reflect upon who is doing what are the roles. The change, that is step 3, the change of perspectives and empathy is also very important in that perspective of taking roles and reflecting perhaps even your own role in such a situation. How can you foster the willingness of people to help other people, to reach out to other people and say, okay, I'm not going to tolerate the situation, I want it to change, I want it to end, but it needs my active role. So this is part of ethical training that young people, but also adults, have the skills to be doing this, to reflect on their own roles and then to go out and change the situation. This is what we call empathy, but empathy needs to be trained. We all have it, but it doesn't come from out of nowhere. We have to rediscover it and practice it in a way in our daily lives. So this is an ethical approach. Step 4, again, would be to reflect upon the ethical principles, and that is most fundamentally of all the principle of responsibility. We are responsible for our own lives, but also for the lives of others, and freedom and responsibility, they are mutually dependent. So when I act in a responsible manner, I'm also helping the situation and and the other people that are living with me. So that would be the ethics of care that I had just briefly mentioned. It's really about attentiveness, support, so really taking care of other people as an expression of responsibility, and then my caring action, going out, helping, changing the situation. That is ethical competence in a way. Step 5 is just addressing those value conflicts. So what is perhaps, why are friendship and sense of fairness, are they anathema or are they linked? Very often we get into the area of moral dilemmas when we do this. So we need to be aware of that as well. Very often what is helpful is some form of storytelling, narrating the conflict. That makes it easier to understand the situation, and that is perhaps a good advice to teachers. Get the students to really tell a story about why they shame that other pupil or student. Why do they hate that other student? Let them create a story, perhaps let them film a video with their smartphones. That is a very smart way, very often, of making them getting more aware of this. And the overall aim, of course, and this is my penultimate step, would be developing the ethos of fairness and respect, making young people aware of the fact that being fair and respectful and mindful is just a sign of a very good ethical character. And it may also foster community perspective. That is, bringing people together and therefore fostering commonality. So again, it's highly reflective and may even help to promote the idea of a fairer online community. And what are options for action? Well, if you think of it, it's about negotiating, but also substantiating rules. I think this type of commonality and all types of community, they need some rules, but these rules aren't fixed and they aren't prescribed, and they shouldn't be prescribed by teachers or ethicists or whatever you call them, but they need to be negotiated, let's say, in the classroom or in families. And that is, of course, what this media ethical roadmap, in the best of cases, perhaps is able to do. With a look at my wristwatch, I'll end here. I say thank you very much for your attention. Bye-bye.